Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Art with Mr. Lynch. I hope you all had a great spring break. Now, before spring break, we were doing a lot of work with clay. We kind of were doing this virtual sculpture unit. And although we are going to be focusing on sculpture this week, we're not going to be so much focusing on the use of clay, although you can use clay this week if you'd like. A lot of the sculpture that we've been working on has been figurative sculpture that when you look at it, you can recognize what the sculpture is or what it's trying to be, whether it was our tiny foods, our mini coil pots, or those creatures and monsters that you were creating with your clay. All of these things are pretty recognizable. Now we're going to be shifting gears a little bit and taking a look at some abstract sculpture. And for our inspiration this week, we're looking at the works of an artist named Charles McGee. Now Charles is from Detroit, Michigan, and he creates these large-scale sculptures that usually aren't very recognizable. When you look at them, it's hard to tell exactly what these are sculptures of. It's less about looking like something real and more about the lines, the shapes, the colors, and how everything plays together with the different parts. And something really interesting about Charles McGee's work is that he does a really good job of combining both organic and geometric shapes. Now let's talk a little bit about what those two different types of shapes mean. Here I've got two shapes. One I would call more geometric, and the other one I would call more organic. Can you guess which one is the geometric one? If you guessed this one, you're right. Geometric shapes often have really straight lines and some pretty sharp corners to them. This one, on the other hand, I would call it an organic shape. Organic shapes tend to have lots of curves and bends, and they can sometimes look a little bit lumpy and not so determined. Both of these are kind of like abstract shapes. Neither of them are a triangle or a square or a circle, although both of them could combine those different shapes. So, using a few different types of materials this week, we are going to build our own Charles McGee inspired abstract sculpture. Now again, this could be done with your clay, or you could use a different material, and I'll get to more of that later on. So, let's get going on our geometric and organic shape sculptures. All right, everyone. So to start on our Charles McGee project, the cool thing about this one is you don't really need any specific materials. I have crayons and markers here. That's what I'm going to use. If you have other coloring tools at home, that would be just fine for you to use as well. There might also be an opportunity for us to use modeling clay as well, but probably not for today. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to be focusing on the differences between organic shapes and geometric shapes. Now remember, previously when I showed you these two pieces of paper, I said this one is geometric. When you see a shape that you can recognize some shapes within, like, this looks kind of like a square, or that reminds me of a triangle, that usually means that it is a geometric shape. But shapes that have less recognizable things going on in them, that look a little blobbier or a little bit more like they're part of the natural world, these would be organic shapes. So that's what we're focusing on today. We're going to be making organic and geometric shapes. And all we're going to need is a sheet of paper and some coloring tools. Next week, we're going to be cutting these shapes out and assembling them. But for today, it's just about becoming familiar with the differences between the two. All right, let's go. I'm going to grab a fresh sheet of paper right here, and maybe what I'll do is I'll fold this paper in half. And I'm going to cut some shapes out of both sides. This side is going to be organic shapes. This side's going to be geometric shapes. Now you can start with a pencil if you'd like. That sometimes is helpful for me. I'm going to try my best to fill up these two sides, so I want to make my shapes rather big. Let's see if I can do 3 or 4 on each side. All right, these are the geometric shapes that I created that I'm gonna work with. Time for some organic shapes. Or you could think of these as sort of blobby shapes. All right, so I've got shapes drawn out here. I think I'm gonna add some colors. Now, even though these shapes are different, the colors don't necessarily have to be different. I could have really bright colors over here and over here. Maybe to make, to show like an even more distinct difference, maybe what I'll do is I'll give my organic shapes polka dots and my geometric shapes stripes. Let's see how that turns out. All right, everyone, there I have it. I've got my geometric shapes and my organic shapes. Now hang on to these because next week we're gonna be cutting them out and arranging them into a sculptural piece on paper. And we might even be able to include some of our clay as well. If you wanna explore this a little bit further, you could try playing around with what making an organic shape or a geometric shape is like with clay. For example, if I were to just roll some clay into a ball and squish it kind of like this into a shape, what do you think? Organic or geometric? I would say organic because of all of those curvy lines. But if I were to take another piece of clay, roll it nice and flat and smush it all the way down, and if I used some kind of tool to cut it into a shape, let's see how this is different. What do you think now? Organic or geometric? I would probably go geometric on that one. Some shapes can include elements of both, kind of like this. This is a shape that could be considered in both categories. I would put it right in the middle. So, hang on to these, like I said. We're gonna be working with them more next week. But in the meantime, I want you just to be thinking about different things that you see out in the world or out in nature and think about whether or not those shapes belong in the geometric category or organic category or somewhere in the middle. Thanks so much for watching, Van Heist. I hope you had a great time, and we will be conducting part 2 of our Charles McGee project next week. Have fun!